Like it or not, the senior and elderly population is vulnerable to negligence committed by medical professionals, nursing home and assisted living facilities, pharmaceutical and medical device companies, insurance companies, and everyday individuals and businesses. The Injured Senior Podcast is here to help. Steve Heisler is the creator of the National Injured Senior Law Center and has been advocating for seniors' rights for over 20 years. You have questions, and Steve Heisler has answers. This is the Injured Senior Podcast.
Hello to all in the Injured Senior community. This is Stephen Heisler, founder and CEO of the National Injured Senior Law Center. And I'm recording this podcast today, coming to you from the land of pleasant living, Baltimore, Maryland. You are currently listening to the Injured Senior Podcast, where we educate and discuss issues of importance to the injured senior and elderly population, as well as to the children and loved ones of the injured senior and elderly population. I am your humble host. So about a month ago, my lovely wife, Michelle, and I were hanging out at home, as we usually do. I'm a homebody. On a Friday night, ended a work week, and we like to just kick back and watch some good Netflix or Amazon. So we decide to watch a movie, and that movie was very uninspiring. So I don't even remember what the name of the movie was. So Michelle went on to Amazon to see if there were any new documentaries that we could download and watch. So Michelle finds a documentary about elder abuse called The Guardians. She says, hey, you might be interested in this. So I said, okay, let's watch it. I always like to agree with my wife. And she said that she knows, obviously, that with the National Injured Senior Law Center, that I like watching anything that has to do with seniors. And this was about elder abuse. So I said, sure, let's watch it. Folks, all I can say is that the 1 hour and 44 minutes that I watched that movie literally shook me to the core. I frankly could not believe what I was watching. This film basically exposes something in my 59 years on the planet Earth that I never thought could occur in America. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, this movie is about for-profit public guardians who are allowed under the law to obtain control, and I mean total control, over elderly individuals under the guise of that elderly individual is incompetent. And we'll talk about that too. And thus, they have the right to get guardianship over the elderly individual or elderly couple and sell their assets and leave them very poor with no freedom or control over their lives. I mean, I felt like I was watching something right out of Nazi Germany. And this was, in 2017, totally legitimate, totally legal, totally endorsed by the legal and judicial infrastructure of Clark County, Nevada. And what's scary, folks, is that this is going on in America now. Right now, as we speak, in other cities. These guardians are not family, so they're not family members of the elderly individuals. They are total strangers. They're not the children. They're not a relative. They are total strangers. So this crime against humanity, which in my opinion it is, was exposed in the film, The Guardians, as well as in a later article in the New Yorker called How the Elderly Lose Their Rights. And I implore you to go online. You can download it right online. It's a great article. So halfway through the film, I tell my wife, hey, I've got to have this guy, the guy that filmed this movie. I have to have him on the podcast. And by the way, his name is Billie Mintz. So I shoot him an email, like right in the middle of the movie, and said, I'm watching your documentary. It is mind blowing as far as what's going on. I'd love to have you on my podcast. And what does Billy do? Billy gets back to me before the end of the movie and says, I'd love to be on your podcast. So guess who we have on today's show? Yes, we have Billie Mintz. Now, Billy is here today to talk about the documentary, The Guardians. And by the way, get the article, The New Yorker, but go to Amazon on your TV and watch that movie. We're going to talk about it in a moment. But anyway, Billy's here, talk about the documentary and the abuses that he exposes and documents that are being committed against the elderly population by public guardians. And in this instance, it was in Clark County, Nevada. Hello, Billy. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Steve?
I'm great. It's we're recording this on a Friday. It's sunny and beautiful outside, and I'm really excited to have you on the show. I never thanked you for responding to my email, but I'm thanking you now because I think this is really, really going to be a wonderful show, and I think our listeners in the injured senior community are really going to get a lot of benefit out of this, and it's probably going to shock them. I don't know if it's going to shock them to the core, but it's something that I think that they need to know about. And I don't think a lot of them know that this is going on in this country. So your documentary, The Guardians, which, by the way, I believe was up for a nomination with the Canadian Movie Association. Am I right about that? Because I read that on Google.
Yeah, I think it was the Canadian Screen Awards, and it's been up for a lot of other prizes. We've won a lot of festivals and other awards throughout its time.
Yeah, it's an absolutely great piece of work. So, what gave you the idea to do this type of movie?
Well, it's not kind of unfortunately, you don't think in documentary filmmaking and in social justice, you don't really have the liberty to think of what kind of movie you want to make. You sort of discover something that's going on and you realize that you're the person that needs to expose this to a larger audience. As you had said, you didn't realize it was going on. And these are the type of crimes that exist in the United States only because people don't know what's going on until it's too late. And I had discovered that it was happening through one individual that I met, and I looked into it. And then I realized that this is something that's happening to thousands upon thousands of people in the United States, specifically elderly people. And I just knew that there was something that I had to do about it to sort of ring the clarion call, the warning bell to say, hey, you need to be careful out there. There are people out there that are looking and are very organized in order to exploit you and take advantage of you and take away your liberties. And there is really very little way to fight back.
So you're a filmmaker, and just to give our injured senior community just a little bit of information about you, had you been doing social justice documentaries before this, or is this the first time that you were delving into the social justice arena? Just a little background.
I as growing up as a neurotic Jew, I always grew up with the concept of like life was unfair and I had to do something about it. And that sort of turned into my profession. It came from the times of being embarrassed at the grocery store when my mother would find something that was the wrong price as advertised. And she would embarrass me. And then I turned that into my job, but I took on a little more serious issues than my mother. But I think documentary, a lot of times it's kind of hard to get out of social justice when you're doing documentaries because that's kind of where our profession leads us. My first film was in the realm of social justice, and the more I delved into things that were happening in our country that law enforcement weren't really doing or weren't able to do something about it. And, where there's victims and victims who are not getting a voice, that's sort of where I gravitated to use my privilege and use my, big, loud, strong voice to help others who were marginalized and in need.
That makes a lot of sense. That's why I'm doing this podcast. So, can you share with our injured senior community the backstory of how you were able to, move forward and make this documentation a reality? This documentary, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. If it's okay to give it some context, because I don't think we've really talked actually about what it's about and what the film is about and what it is that
Sure.
we uncovered. Basically, I learned that there was basically a criminal conspiracy running through family courts all across the United States, where lawyers and judges and what people call themselves as professional and public guardians, people who are supposed to be taking care of vulnerable people, were using the color of law in order to basically legally kidnap elderly people, take guardianship over their lives and their money, and incarcerate them in nursing homes against their will. And what I uncovered was in fake diagnosis of dementia. So basically what happens is somebody knocks on your door and you don't even know who they are, but they actually already have legally been able to take over your life and your finances. And there's a whole backstory that was happening without your knowledge, where somebody in your healthcare was involved. And what's happening is that elderly people are being targeted, and by an entire system that's, completely legal, unethical, but legal, that's running through the court system, which is set up to entrap and snare you and take away all your money and your liberty.
And how did you find out about this?
Well, interestingly enough, a total different story was I was looking for my next film, and I kind of asked, the powers that be, meaning whether it be the universe or God, whatever you believe, of, where's my next story? And I heard a very strong voice to go to Serbia, to go to Belgrade, and I'd never been there, and I was confused, and so I flew to Belgrade, showed up, and immediately within 5 minutes met a man who asked me, what am I doing here? And I told him the story I just told you, that I just kind of got this premonition to find my next story in Belgrade. And he kind of laughed and then immediately introduced me to a man whose parents were taken in a guardianship scam. And I had no idea what that meant. And so I met with this man, and his parents were basically kidnapped by their accountant, who became their executor. And so I went to look into it and found out that there were actual full organizations that were set up in order to help elderly people, but nobody had written about it. Nobody had made a film about it. So I did a couple years worth of research, and then found some cases in Las Vegas and decided to just focus on one county. And I exposed all of the players that were basically being parasites and vultures and doing terrible things to elderly people in Vegas.
So, and by the way, I don't even know if Belgrade is a democracy or not, but I kind of think it's somewhere in Eastern Europe, and you think, well, it is or could have been a communist country. I could see it happening in a communist country, but I could never see it happening in the United States of America. So who are the players? And could we kind of go through from the beginning, when the person knocks on the door, or actually before they knock on the door? Where does the whole scenario start, I guess?
Okay, well, it's interesting because where it starts for the individual is the knock on the door, but it actually started a long time earlier, unbeknownst to the person who is getting that knock on the door. And once they knock on your door, you're already done. you're already part of the system. And if you're one of those unlucky people that get your door knocked on, which happens to, it could very much happen to you. So don't think it can't, because it happens to hundreds of thousands of people in the United States. In fact, there's 1.5 million people right now under guardianship, and it's unknown how much of that is unlawful guardianship, or it's actually legal, but unethical guardianship, or guardianship, what we call guardianship abuse. But what happens is it happens a lot earlier. And it could happen, you could be walking down the street and going to your community center, and the person who works at the desk is a mole, and a person who's on the look, all you need is a house, because they're looking for your house. And they know your situation. Maybe your children are out of state, and so you can be taken advantage of easier, or maybe you have issues with your family that this person knows about. So this person could be a person who works at a community center. It could be your doctor. It could be the assistant to your doctor. It's anybody that has knowledge of who you are and where you are, and they're looking for a particular type of person. There's a model that they're looking for, and then what happens is, doctors are in on this, or physician's assistants. And what they do is they write up a fake diagnosis of dementia, or saying that you cannot take care of yourself unbeknownst to you. And then they have an entire court proceeding where lawyers are involved, guardians are involved, and the judge is involved. And they basically kind of sell and trade you like on a stock market, but in family court, where they give temporary guardianship to this guardian. And all these people are in on it. It's a conspiracy that's been going on for 40 years. It's a criminal conspiracy. It's very well organized, well oiled. These lawyers, they make so much money off of it by just getting you caught up in the system that you can't get out of, and they basically drain your entire savings. So I can take a break there. I can keep taking you through the process. Up to you.
Well, let me ask you this. So who is the ringleader for all of this, if you know? In other words, who is really the one that is kind of running the show and is, I guess, the mastermind of it? In the movie, I kind of thought it was, I guess I'm going to ask you about him, but one of the public guardians who had been like the godfather of public guardians. But who really is the mastermind of this?
Well, I think it's probably different in each scenario of what state or what county is operating. There's definitely a playbook. They all, across the states, we've learned that they all operate from the same playbook. They're all doing the same system. And when you have, let's call them wolves, I mean, it just depends who the alpha is and who's the scariest and who's running the whole thing. You have a lot of corrupt people that are all coming to the same trough and eating from the same place. But in the case of my film, The Guardians, in Clark County, Las Vegas, in Nevada, it's basically a gentleman by the name of Jared Schaefer, who he had been the public guardian before. So he kind of created all the laws around it, how to deal with all these elderly people. And of course, guardianship is actually intended to be a good thing. It's for vulnerable people who can't really take care of themselves. They're going to need a guardian. Most people will need a guardian at some point in their life. But the thing is that they discovered there's so much money to be made. I mean, we're dealing right now with the hugest wealth transfer about to happen from, parents to children. We're talking about trillions of dollars that are about to change hands from parents to their children. And these scrupulous guardians, lawyers, judges, the entire family court system has found a way to get in the way of that transfer and actually take all the money. And most people in guardianship that are in it against their will lose everything, and the children don't get anything. And they don't only lose all their money, but they lose their liberty, and the rest of their life is in some level of incarceration that their children cannot get them out of. That's those with children. This was happening for 20 years to a large generation that did not have children. And then now we're dealing with the baby boomer generation who, there's a lot more people with children. So they're actually taking them with, a lot of consequences that come with it, because the children are trying to fight back, but they're helpless because nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're up to.
Okay, so thank you for talking about Jared Schaefer. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the other players in a moment. So we left off at where that basically they don't even know that there's been this whole court proceeding and all these legal proceedings, and then they get a knock on the door. All right. So can you tell our injured senior community, once there's that knock on the door and everything's already been decided, it's already been adjudicated, they're toast. So what happens from there?
Well, they're given, in some of the cases that I followed, they're given a couple choices from this guardian. Now, keep in mind, this guardian does this every day to different people. They are not compassionate. They're sociopaths. They're extremely dangerous, and they're trafficking humans. And all they're doing to this person, it's another cash cow. It's another person they need to get you out of your house, with which they have the legal right to do so, because they have a legal binding piece of paper that says you cannot take care of yourself when you have dementia. They get you out. They take you to a nursing home. Sometimes the nursing home's in the know. Sometimes they're not. It all depends. And they take you to the nursing home. They drug you up. You're saying, hey, what is going on? You're confused. You don't know what's happening. And then the very next day, they show up in a U-Haul, because this is just systemic, and they go through your house. They find your cash. They find everything. They already have access to your stocks, to your bank accounts, etc. They have to wait on that, because they only have temporary guardianship of you at this point. There's going to be another trial coming up that you're not going to know about, that it's going to happen, and you're not going to be able to show up to it because you're going to be incarcerated in this nursing home. I know this sounds terrible. It is terrible, and it sounds like a horror story, and it sounds like it's not true. And I know I sound like I'm just being what's the Yiddish word, a Bummermonster, of saying this is a big, bad, scary world. But it's true, and it happens, and it's happened. I've seen it happen to so many thousands of people that I don't doubt it at all anymore. I did at the beginning, and so So what they do is, when you're in temporary guardianship, they try to keep you incarcerated in the nursing home. They keep you drugged up because they say you have dementia, and they put you on all sorts of psychotropics. And if you resist, they then take you to the psych ward. A lot of people have been taken to the psych ward, where if you keep giving them a hard time, they'll do something about it that will probably have more permanent effects. But what they do is they go through your house, they find all the cash, and then they empty your house. They sell everything just to see what they can, and because they're getting your house ready to sell, because a lot of this is a real estate racket as well.
It kind of reminds me of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that that they brought in people. A couple of them were sane. We're not insane. And after they got done with them, with the drugs and with the shock therapy, they had given up, and they couldn't fend for themselves. So, and watching the movie, I think the part that broke my heart the most was when, and I don't know if it was the Norths, and we'll talk about the Norths in a moment, but it was a couple, an elderly couple, and the public guardians, the public guardian and I guess his or her posse or group that comes with them. I compare them to the Gestapo. They're waiting outside, and they're waiting for them to leave so they can then apprehend them as they're leaving and move forward and get into the house and start the process. And I guess the two elderly individuals, they knew what was going on, and they were not going to leave that house. So it's like a standoff. And your movie shows where they're just basically outside, like, they're police that are on a stakeout and waiting for the criminal to come outside. I mean, it is chilling.
Yeah, but I can speak to it. That's a rare case where there's a standoff. Usually, if somebody comes to your house and who's official and says they're an officer of the court, and that and they threaten you. They give you three choices. They say, you either come with us and we'll figure this out. We'll take you to the nursing home and we'll figure this out. And they lie to you. They say it's only for, we're just going to do some tests on you for a couple of days. The second choice is, or we bring the police and you go to jail, or we will take you to a psych ward. You're going to choose to go with these people because you don't know any better, because it seems legit. And you don't want to call. A lot of people, how they get these people is if they do have children to call, you don't want to call your kids because you're embarrassed, because you want to figure this out for yourself. You don't want to scare anybody. And that's how they get you. They prey on your. It's just very uncomfortable. It's very embarrassing to have this kind of thing happen to you. And like the biggest advice is, first of all, don't go. Ask for the police and call whoever you know right away and tell them, this is happening. Please help me. Please come and help me. Because I think a lot for elderly people, there's this, I wouldn't say pride, but like you want to, obviously you have your full wits about you, and you have your agency, and you think you can take care of yourself. But I'm telling you, if somebody shows up at your door and tells you to come with you, you cannot take care of yourself. You are in deep, you are in serious trouble. And the only way they get away with this is with your compliance. Do not comply, fight back. You're fighting for your life. I'm sorry to sound like an alarmist, but it's true.
No, it's really good advice.
Well, I'll say this. It's not believable. And that's how they get you, because it's just not believable. So we all want to get along with people. We want to be non-difficult. This is the time to be difficult. Don't go out unless you're kicking and screaming. And it will get to that. They have put people on stretchers. They have physically removed people. And I have accounts of that. You'll see that in the film.
Yeah. How are the children or the significant, family members, how are they allowed to be shut out of the process before you get the knock on the door? In the movie, the daughter of the nurse shows up. She doesn't know where her parents are for a couple of days. They're shut out of the process, and they're not even notified when this has occurred. How is that able to happen?
Well, there's different theories. In the film, we found we found one case and other suspected cases of mail fraud, which is obviously in any court proceeding, there needs to be due process for it to be constitutional. So basically, if there's going to be a court hearing about you, it's not legal unless you know about it. And so they have to mail some information to you. But what's happening and what is consistent is that these people are not getting anything in the mail. They're not being told that this is happening. And that's where this is a federal crime, is that they are not following due process. And the federal crime is that they are not actually, they're tampering with the mail. So what they're doing in some cases is they are taking guardianship and changing your mailing address and then sending out the mail, knowing full well that the mail is not going to get to you. So that's one way that they do it. Otherwise, they've been doing this for so long that they don't even bother following the rules because nobody's looking into it. Steve, you are the only in the 7 years I have been doing this. Okay, you are the only lawyer that has approached me asking, how can I help? How can you help? Okay, I know so many lawyers that watch this film, know that I'm doing it, even friends of mine who are lawyers that have never said, hey, let's put an end to this. And that's why this is a scam run by lawyers, completely run by lawyers. And there are no lawyers fighting lawyers. And that is a serious issue with your industry.
And it causes a major, it just creates a major stain on our profession. And those lawyers should be disbarred or they should be prosecuted and put in jail. It's no different than stealing money from your client, which you are doing.
Yeah, but many times I have been working with lawyers and found misconduct of other lawyers and wanted to say, "Hey, we got them. Let's call the bar." And I've been dissuaded and convinced not to because there is a culture of lawyers not wanting to tell on other lawyers.
Well, and I don't think Jared Schaefer is an attorney, but I know that Norheim, I believe Norheim, the administrative law judge, he was the judge over all these hearings, and he was so complicit. It's disgusting.
But Schaefer wouldn't be able to do what he was doing without his pack of lawyers. Schaefer is the guy who came up with the idea, but I would say that it was definitely the lawyers that surrounded him. All the lawyers are complicit. Any lawyer that's billing, any senior that's in an abusive guardianship and a faulty guardianship is complicit. They're all in on it. It's a conspiracy. It's a cabal of really bad-minded people.
Yeah, and then, well, the police, the criminal justice system also was complicit because the article in New Yorker, the writer of that article recounts how people would go to the police and say, my parents or whoever has been kidnapped, and the police, their canned response would be, it's not a police matter, it's a civil matter. No, it's a police matter. It's a police matter.
Exactly. But at the same time, if that guardian shows up at your door and you don't go with them, in the order, it allows them to call the police. And I can tell you thousands of times the police have come and helped get those elderly people out of their homes by force, by police force.
Well, now that we're naming all the players in this conspiracy and this criminal, it's like it's a racketeering crime as far as I'm concerned. What about the complicity of doctors or social workers? I think you had said that it was mostly physician's assistants that would, just put like a prescription in front of or a pad in front of the doctor and say, sign this, and then they would write in that so-and-so has dementia and should be kept under guardianship or should be placed under guardianship?
I think it's a lot more calculated than that. I think they had a system, and it was like kind of Ocean's 11. Everybody had a role in order to make this thing work. And one of the things was they needed a medical professional to sign documents that said they had dementia. But in these cases that I found, it was a physician's assistant. And a physician's assistant has no legal or medical authority to sign dementia, but that did not matter to the court because there was no oversight.
So they were signing them, the physician's assistants were signing them on the letterhead, on the doctor's letterhead, on the pad or whatever?
Not even, Steve. Not even. It wasn't even a doctor's letterhead. It was a total bogus document that the courts accepted, that it was just part of their scam. They're all in on it.
And can we talk just briefly about April Parks? So as the movie documents, she was one of the minions for Jordan Schaefer. She was one of the public guardians that got a lot of work. I mean, sociopathic really sounds too nice to describe this lady who seemed to, she was sadistic and seemed to enjoy, to the way that I just interpreted it, she enjoyed splitting up families or, basically hurting people. I mean, is that accurate or is that what you saw?
Yeah, she was a real boogeyman, but she's just one among many of them. There was a whole bunch of them, but she was the one I think that was, without any apology and not trying to do it secretly. She was just outright open, making people's lives hell. But it wasn't just her. She was one of the guardians. She was a private guardian, but the public guardian was doing it. They were all doing it. They were just all terribly evil people that had no inhibitions and no remorse about what they were doing. And luckily, one of them, like April Parks, ended up going to prison. But that was just, I mean, I think they were just, that was kind of just, they were giving her up. She was the sacrifice. I was at the time dealing with the DA and covering what the district attorney was doing and how he was looking into it. But after all that, just to arrest 4 people was a real slap on the face to the thousands upon thousands of people that are victimized and are still being victimized by this guardianship scam.
Yeah. So when April Parks got indicted, I jumped up and, was like, yeah, that was justice for me. But as you said, it's like a little pebble, or a little granule of sand in a big beach. I mean, there's so many bad actors and so many criminals that are continuing to perpetuate this. Why do you think that there just has not been any more action taken in Clark County against Jordan Schaefer and all the other private and public guardians who I believe are continuing to do this as we speak? So I know it's like a 2-question question, but why aren't they going further? And is this still going on?
Well, okay. So just to be clear, his name is Jared Schaefer, just in case there's a Jordan Schaefer out there that.
I apologize.
It's okay. Just in case Jordan Schaefer gets a bunch of phone calls and death threats.
My apologies to Jordan Schaefer. Okay. Jared.
Okay. So basically, this is a mafia. Except the mafia would never even do anything like this. I think the mafia has more regard for human life, especially elderly people, than this mafia. This is what is sometimes termed as the judicial mafia. And it goes high. It goes really high. We're talking about Vegas. We're talking about a lot of money is made. This is an entire economy that is based. Most lawyers that deal in family court make their living through the trafficking of elderly people. And so the reason why they're not stopping it, because the DA has no power. The DA has no power over these people because it goes all the way up to, the people above them and this is a huge business. This is a $1 billion business.
Right. No. Yeah, but this was exposed. I mean, it was exposed by the media. It was exposed by your movie. It was exposed by the article in the New Yorker. And I believe didn't the Nevada legislature reform the law, or was that just a nominal reform?
Yeah, I'm sure it was a couple laws that they were able to get through, but the problem is that these problems will stay as long as it stays at the state level, because the state's involved with it. So, and the problem is that if it goes above the state, we're then dealing with the feds. And God bless them, but who knows what they're capable of. I went to go show my film to a bunch of federal agents at the J. Edgar Hoover building, and I think we were trying to watch the film on dial-up, and they didn't have the technological capacity to even watch my movie on the internet or on a CD-ROM. So relying on them to deal with such a huge systemic corruption is it's laughable. I was really let down. I was very excited to be able to bring my film and all of our evidence of 4 years. Even one of the people that came with me, she had 20 years of evidence, and that was already 4 years ago.
Yeah, that is just astounding. I mean, unbelievable. I don't want our listeners, our injured senior community, to take this episode lightly and say, oh, well, it's out in Vegas and I'm in this part of the country and it's not happening here. Well, yes, it is happening in other cities. I believe Sarasota is also a hot spot. Is it really anywhere else, anywhere where people go to retire?
Yeah, it's happening everywhere. There's not one state that does not have guardianship abuse going on. And remember, a lot of this happens with a relative. It's the relative that allows these people in. It's a son or a daughter or a nephew or a niece. They like to work with family members, so it happens even with your own family. Most the family members involved somewhat, but even they don't even know what they're getting themselves into. What the states that I found that it happened the most were states that were two-party states, meaning when you make a phone call, and in order to record a phone call, both parties have to be aware of the recording. So you can't secretly record people in about 9 states in the U.S. And those 9 states are where guardianship abuse is rampant because there's no way to catch them.
So, we've really focused on the public and private guardians, the non-family members, but you're saying that there's also a subgroup of family members that are some are knowingly complicit, but some are also unwittingly involved in it. They don't know that it's as much of a crime as it is.
Yeah, there are different ways that you can fall into guardianship abuse. One is just from without the guardians at all. One is just from your family members. I mean, there's, parental abuse, a lot of times elderly abuse, vulnerable persons abuse from the hands of your children or family members who want your money and will take advantage of you when you're vulnerable. And then there's guardianship, where they do that when the children aren't around to help protect you. But then there's also a mix of the two, and there's 2 divisions of that. One is where one of the family members is helping against the other family members, is helping the guardian get in there, and they have their own side deals going on. But then there'll be other times where a family member will help, probably with good intentions. Or maybe they feel they made a mistake halfway through, but there's no way getting out. Once this well-oiled machine, this ruthless, sociopathic, without any conscience machine gets a hold, gets their fingers in, they're not letting go. It's like a pit bull who can't let go of its jaw once it bites down.
Yeah, that's just outrageous. And just to make it clear, there are lots of legitimate guardianships that are where the guardian is actually looking out for the best interest of the ward, as they call the elderly individual. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, we can't operate our society the way it's run without having guardians. Elderly people need guardianship. It's a necessary part of the cycle of life, where if you cannot take care of yourself, you need somebody to take care of you. And if you don't have family, there needs to be some social services, whether it be through the public or through private, that's going to take care of you. So but like anything, if the system is not fully well thought out and there are loopholes for people to come in and exploit, you're going to have that. And I think as a society, we are just evolving. It wasn't that long ago that we weren't as civil as a society as we are right now. And as we become more civilized, we need to figure out our ailments. And so where there's crime and where there's darkness is in the shadows of things we have yet to both realize and reform. And so that's all this is. And so on a positive note, it is just like anybody's own internal growth, we're growing as a society. And there are, it's biological. Sociopathy is biological. You're going to have 4% of the population that do not have a conscience and will be out to hurt you. And that's just part of humanity. So it's going to exist, just like cockroaches or mosquitoes, whether you like it or not, they exist. And they just hide. They hide in these loopholes and these things that we have yet to figure out. And it's not all doom and gloom, because I do have solutions on how to figure this out. But unfortunately, the only people who are dealing with this kind of stuff are the people that are caught up in it. And it's too late if you're caught up in it. There are very few people like me that are advocates and trying to help. And there's some really amazing advocates I was able to film in my film, and they're all over the country, but we're very small and very unorganized. And I will tell you this, Steve, there's not enough lawyers. There's not enough lawyers. It's an easy system for a lawyer like yourself to do some oversight, see where the holes are. These guys are not hiding what they're doing. They are all easily litigatable. And I don't know if that's a real word, litigatable.
We'll let it work for this show. I think it works.
Litigatable, and it's I really think this is an easy system to clean up, and it's something that can be profitable, because these people are stupid. They might be evil and they might be smart at what they're doing, but they're stupid. They leave a track, and we really can go after them.
Well, yeah, I think, and like in a lot of other instances, the only way to achieve justice for a lot of people is through civil trials, is through the civil judicial system, because it's criminal, but it's also negligence. It's gross negligence. It's wanton and willful. And when you're sitting on a jury and you're presented with stories like you told today that are absolutely just heartbreaking, the juries usually tend to get it right. And they tend to, they know injustice when they see it. So we're going to continue to do everything we can to proceed in that direction, and try to, by getting results, very favorable results through the judicial system. Hopefully that will prompt some of our lawmakers to finally make some lasting changes in the guardianship arena. So,
well, I don't think we can leave it to law enforcement. Law enforcement has totally failed our elderly population.
Okay.
If for many reasons they're stupid. Law enforcement is stupid, and I'm sorry to say that, but they just don't care about elderly people. It's in every state. The reason why this has not reformed and there's been no changes is because our law enforcement do not have the ability to do it. And those that are with the power to do it are usually corrupt, and they're corrupt by their power and by their votes. They don't care. Our society is sick because we do not take care of our elderly people. And it's, again, I'll say it again, the only way to cure this is to go after the people in civil court. It's the only way. It's not, law enforcement won't do it. Our system won't do it. They're all in on it. They're complicit. They're part of the problem. They're actually doing it. But again, if anybody's listening to this who has a law degree and they're smart, you can make a lot of money. These people, all their mistakes are out on the open. And it could be a huge business for anybody to go after these people.
Right. It shouldn't be the economic benefit should not be the primary motivation for attorneys. But like you said, juries tend to come back with big verdicts when they're outraged. So yeah, I mean that's definitely something to take into consideration. But that is really well said, Bill. Before we start to shut it down for today, could you just repeat some of those action steps as far as individuals who either are getting that knock on the door and law enforcement or the public guardians are on the other side and telling them they have to leave or they want to come in? What are some action steps that they can take, or their children who find out about it and want to be able to save their parents?
Okay, well, first and foremost is get your legal affairs in order with your estate, and go to your a lawyer that you trust, an estate lawyer that you trust. Make sure that they watch the guardians and say you want to protect yourself from guardianship abuse. That's the first thing, is you need to be in touch with your children if you have them, or anybody that you trust, that in this case occurrence of being put into guardianship without your knowledge, that you have legal papers that defer to the person that you trust, whether it be the kid, that you do not give anybody the right to put you in guardianship until this person has been spoken to. So I'm not a lawyer. I know that there's something like that out there that you can protect yourself, at least that there's a paper trail that says you are aware of this might be happening and you've taken precautions. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that doesn't matter because they're going to do this regardless of whether you have it, but it's going to help you down the line. And then when they show up at your door, you tell them, if you do not know who they are, you tell them absolutely not. If they try to threaten you, you do not buy into their threats. If they threaten you with the police, you not only say, good, call the police. I'm going to call the police as well. And you call the police. And then the next thing you do the first thing you do, I think, would be call the police. And then the next thing you do, just so that you have it on the record, and then the next thing you do is call your family member. And I would, again, set that up, like watch the film, get your kids to watch the film. Better to be safe than sorry. Chances are it's not going to happen to you, but better be safe than sorry, because there's a great chance, a bigger chance than you know, that it is going to happen to you. So have that conversation with your family or the person that you love, and they be the first person you call. Have an emergency contact. We always have to fill out who's your emergency contact. Well, this is something you need an emergency contact for. So you call them, you put them on the phone with those people, and you have somebody that is your emergency contact that could show up at your door very quickly if you have that ability to do that. Do not go with that person. Don't even invite them in the house. Don't invite anybody in the house that you don't know.
Right. That is really valuable information, Billy. And our entire injured senior, or just our senior and elderly population in the United States, should be very grateful to you, as well as other individuals who are fighting against this horrific process. So if any of our listeners want to see The Guardians, which I've already said is a much watch, and you've said to protect yourselves, you've got to see this show, this documentary. Where would they be able to go find it?
Well, right now it's on Amazon. I don't know if it's for purchase or not on Amazon, but if for any reason you can't get it on Amazon, I don't know if your listeners have a way to email you, but I will provide you with a link to watch the film if you can't get it off Amazon, or you don't have Amazon, or you can't afford to purchase it for yourself to watch it online. We can set something up for your viewers to watch it.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill, because I'm sure there's a lot of people, including my parents, who just don't know how to even, access Amazon or Netflix. And so we don't want them to be left out. So yeah, if you could, give us a link, and if anyone wants to watch The Guardians and they can't get it, they can't access it off of Amazon or wherever else, they can contact me at steve@injuredseniorhotline.com, and I will gladly furnish them with the link. And we'll also want them to give me their feedback, because again, we just have to start educating and exposing this to everybody, because whether you're an elder, or you're a senior, or you're in your 30s and your 40s, or even in your 20s, you have parents and you have grandparents. So everybody is touched by this. So that's wonderful. Billy, if they want to get in touch with you, if they wanted to email you about their own story or whatever, is that possible? Or would they be able to email you, or maybe get you off of social media, or what's the way to get in touch with you?
Of course. Best way to reach me is info, INFO, at Billie Mintz, BILLIE, Mintz, M as in Mary, IN as in Norman, TZ.com. And you can go to my website, billiemintz.com, and I have an email link there as well. You can access my other stuff, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
And just for the record, could you tell our audience a little bit about, just briefly, you do have some other documentaries. I haven't seen them yet, but I understand that they are just as good as The Guardians. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about some of those, about those films?
Sure. I made a film a while back about Ponzi schemes. This was about 4 months before Bernie Madoff was exposed. I was the victim of a Ponzi scheme, and I had no idea what a Ponzi scheme was. And so I became very involved in bringing justice to all the people. It was at the time the largest Ponzi scheme in the United States, without knowing who Bernie Madoff was. And 4 months later, that became. And then I made a film about, I was very fascinated with people in Middle America that were very dedicated towards making a play about Jesus. And I lived, it was the largest Jesus pageant in the United States of America, the longest running. It's been running for 100 years. So I made a film about that. And I'm making a film, I just finished a film right now about an artist who died without anybody knowing who he was. And it's a film about the grandson as he travels across the world to find his grandfather's paintings.
Wow. Yeah. What are the names of the movies in order?
Yeah, sorry. First film is called The Ponzi Scheme. The next film is called Jesus Town, USA. And then the new film that's about to come out this year is called Portrayal.
Wow. Well, Billy, we want to, again, we want to thank you for coming on. I am going to have you on again. We could, talk about, obviously there's so much to talk about with the guardianship epidemic that we have in this country, and discuss maybe stories about other individuals and their particular situation. We'll talk about that, but we definitely want to have you back on, and we can have you back on to comment about other social injustices that are under your telescope that you're kind of investigating or looking at. Now, I know that you probably don't want to reveal if it's something that, you might be, exposing later on, but things that you can talk about, we definitely want to have you on. So thanks, Bill.
I'm open. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, Injured Senior Community, this is Steve Heisler about to sign off. That's it for today. If you have any legal questions or would like a legal consultation, feel free to email me at steve@injuredseniorhotline.com. Also, if you would like to audition to be a guest on the Injured Senior podcast, such as telling your story as an injured senior or elder, or as the child or a loved one of an injured senior or elder, again, email me at steve@injuredseniorhotline.com. Don't forget, Injured Senior Community, if you like the content that was discussed today in this episode, please head on over to our show notes where you will find a summary of today's show and any important links we mentioned in this episode. Also, always feel free to reach out to me about your own story, as I just mentioned. And feel free, as always, to email me. And I would love to engage in correspondence to learn more about it and see if there's anything I can do to help. Now, if you can, please subscribe to our show on any of your favorite platforms. We're on all of them: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. If you could give a 5-star rating and review, that would be awesome. I know this ran about double the time that we normally allot for each episode. I mean, this ran for about an hour, but it was really, really vital stuff. And I'm so glad that you're able to get this information and hopefully do everything you can to protect yourself and your loved one from what we talked about today. So thanks again for listening to today's show. Be sure to tune in to next week's show, and I will talk to you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Stay safe and stay protected.
Thanks for listening to the Injured Senior Podcast with Steve H. Heisler. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate, subscribe, review, and share on Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more or to get help anytime, go to injuredseniorhotline.com or call 855-622-6530. We'll see you next time.